Well, Captain Michael Forbess, welcome to the show. Glad to
Howdy.
have you here today. I know by the time this thing debuts, I'll be a couple of months late. I'm already a couple of weeks late, but happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
Yes, sir. So you spent that on the boat. Glad you could join me now that you're off. Um, 63 years old, and 61 of those have been on the water.
Yes.
So let's start real early. Where were you born, and how did you end up getting into this mess?
I was born in Memphis, lived in West Memphis till I was 2 years old. My grandmother used to cook for Eno Dupree for Tennessee Towing on the Cotton Queen and I believe the old Winchester, not the one that's out there now. And Eno Dupree, Dutch Clark, Adley, Frank Dupree, whole bunch of them said they need a boat store up around Catlettsburg. So my grandmother said something to my mom and dad, and they got talking about it and said, well, they'd go do it. So moved to Catlettsburg. There's a little mom and pop grocery store up on the hill right across from where the Amtrak station is now, which is right up from the repair terminal. So they bought that, opened the store up there. While they were doing that, Eno and a bunch of them started tramping up an old Corps of Engineers Army quarter boat. And they brought this thing all the way up the river, tied it up there at Catlettsburg next to Murdy Boggs's. And Murdy let him tie it in there for free so as he could tie his boats on the side of it. Went through, refurbished it, had the grocery store downstairs, and then we moved upstairs. And I think it was about a year from the time we were in the store on the hill. During that time, they were refurbishing the old Army Corps Engineers quarter boat. So we had the store downstairs and we lived upstairs. And then that's when we moved on it. So I actually moved upstairs when I was 3, but we came up here when I was 2, well, up to Catlettsburg. I had a cousin. She learned to walk on the old Cotton Queen. Like I tell everybody, I shit my last diaper on it. My grandmama was cooking on it. My uncle was the engineer on it, then went into the pilot house on it. And then we started selling groceries out of that. I had a flat bottom John boat before I had a tricycle because the parking lot had number 2 rock in it. I wasn't riding a tricycle or a bicycle. That wasn't going to work. So we had the old boat store there. Whenever the water would come up, we had, ramp went out to the walkway. If the water come up, there's a time period there that they would stack the old metal milk crates and lay 2x12s across it. And I'd walk from the walkway across those to get to the hill. And then when the water got higher, we would put flats in there and do the same process. And then I have to climb up the little hill to the blacktop road, then go over the flood wall, then walk up to the school. So theoretically, I used to walk a mile uphill both ways, back and forth to school, because I had to walk up to get over the flood wall. And when I came back, I had to walk up to get over the flood wall to come back down. And then you go down the hill to the store or up the hill to come back. So that's what we used to laugh about. I can honestly say I walked uphill both ways to school and that. And we didn't have a school bus, didn't even know what a school bus was. If we seen one, it was like, wow, there go them kids. And then I was there, and that's where I grew up. When we sold it, I thought Murdy Boggs was my grandfather. All in times because of Brian Boggs, who was young. It was Clarence's son. Him and I grew up together, and I knew Murdy was his grandpa. Well, I thought Captain Murdy was my grandpa, and everybody just called him Captain Murdy. When we sold the store, I said, well, I'm going to go back and see Papa. And Mom and Dad said, what are you talking about? I said, well, he's my grandpa. No, he's not your grandpa. I said, well, shit. There was 2 terrible things that happened. First day I came home from school, the day we sold the boat store, we moved out of the store into a 31-foot Holiday Rambler. I came home from school, and there was a lady named Ona Stewart, but I couldn't call her Miss Stewart, so I always called her Myrna. I came home from school that day, walked in the trailer and looked at Mom, and I said, where's Myrna? Well, she's not here anymore. I said, what do you mean she's not here anymore? Well, she cooked and cleaned the house. No, she raised me. When I came home from school, she had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich waiting on me. When I got up in the morning, she had breakfast ready, and then she took care of the upstairs because Mom was downstairs working with Dad, typing orders and working the business. So Myrna raised me. I come in, she wasn't there. I was in the 6th grade. I started crying, throwing the god awfulest fit. You know, Dad threatened to bust my ass if I didn't calm down. And Mom said, well, I said, I want to go see Myrna. So they took me to her house. She fixed me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We sat there and talked. She says, honey, I was going to retire years ago. She says, but you were so damn cute. And I said, yeah, everybody hated me. But her grandkids will tell to this day that she sure did love you. We don't know why. Of course, they'd always do it laughing because I grew up with all of it. But there was, when we sold the store, we moved into that travel trailer. We just toured around, you know, around the country there for the summer. Right before school started, I was living in Lexington, was going to go to school where my brother, for the 1 year he taught school, was going to teach. And then right before school started, we moved to Flatwoods, you know, the home of Billy Ray Cyrus. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
So I
sir.
ended up going to school there at Russell, lived in a camper for a few months. Then Mom and Dad bought a house trailer. Dad bought in partners with Joe Cremines that had a marina down in Greenup. So right back on the river I am. You know, we left there, left the boat store. Well, we're on a marina then. So I'm down there every weekend after school helping through all that time. And then, you know how they always talk about, you know, the kid left, and when he came back, his mom and dad had packed up and moved everything out of the house, but left him there. Went to haul some cows with my brother-in-law's daddy one day, went to Flemingsburg, came back. Mr. Cornett says, Mom and Dad's car and truck's not here. I said, I don't know. Went up to the trailer door, looked in, door was locked, and there was no furniture. I looked in at Mr. Cornett and I asked him, I said, there's nobody here. He goes, what do you mean? I said, they've moved and left me. Well, he was laughing. He goes, no, they haven't. I said, I'm telling you, there ain't nobody in that trailer. So he walked up, looked in the window, looked at me. Hell, I started crying again. My mom and dad left me. They moved out. You know, what am I going to do? So he called my sister and said, where's Bill and Butch at? He said, they're not here. Well, they're at the house. What house? Well, they bought a house. All through my life, Mom thought Dad would have told me something. Dad thought Mom told me something. And guess who didn't know shit? So my sister had to tell him where it was at. We drive over. I get out. I've been bawling. Y'all thought y'all, I'm trying to hug him. They're trying to get stuff moved in the house. I said, what is wrong with you? You moved and left me. We didn't leave you, Mr. Cornett said. And this man never cussed. He said, the hell you didn't. So he's been crying his ass off the whole time because y'all were gone. He said, I didn't even know you had a house. He went, oh. So that's when we finally lived in something that was something that had a foundation under it. You know, it was on a boat that all the time floated. And even to this day, if I'm on a fixed foundation like I am right now, my wife will look at me, everybody knows me, and I will sit there and they will see me just weaving back and forth real easy. And she said, will you stand still? I said, hell, I'm trying to stand still, but it ain't working just all the years, you know, doing that. And then, when we was at the boat store, I used to look across the river. There was a dry dock over it. It's McGinnis Incorporated. Bruce McGinnis' dad had it, Doug, and then Ernie Thompson, which is Daryl Thompson's dad. Ernie ran it. Doug owned it. I used to look over and tell Mom and Dad, I said, well, if I don't ever start running a boat, I'm going to go to work over there as a welder. The 2 days before I turned 18, it was a Friday, I went over to McGinnis there at South Point, walked in. Ernie had him a little office that was off the side where he went down. It was about the size of 4 outdoor privies. It was small. Tony Holbrook was in one side, Ernie was in the other. I went walking in there. Ernie turned around and looked at me. He goes, can I help you? And I said, yeah, you Mr. Thompson? He goes, yeah, you are. And I said, Mike Forbess. He says, hell's fire, you mean you're still alive? And I said, that's funny, Ernie. Yeah, I'm still alive. He goes, well, hell, half the people knew you wanted to drown you when you was a kid, and the other half said you was going to drown before you ever got away from over there. And he was talking about how Daddy used to come over in the delivery boat, would pick him up, and then he would run Ernie up to the fleet to check a barge or something. If the boats were busy and Ernie couldn't get up there, he would just hire Dad to run him up and check stuff out. Or they had one sinking, he'd run the pumps up and stuff for him. So I told Ernie, I said, he said, what do you want? I said, I want a job as a welder. He said, well, can you weld? Yeah. He said, well, go over the hill. We're going to give you a test. I said, all right. Go over the hill. And Leonard Williams, big old red haired, big burly son of a bitch, had big wad of red man tobacco inside it. I mean, like he would put a half a pack and stuff at one side. And we'll get to that in a minute. So I go down there and he goes, well, let's see if you can weld, old boy. Handed me the rod and stinger, and I start, well, I said, Jesus, creamy, can you turn this son of a bitch down some? I said, that's too much juice. He turned a little bit. He goes, I can't go any lower. I said, well, look, if you'll turn it down so I can show you I can weld, because I'm used to welding, you know, on clean metal, obviously not rusted out barges, and it was clean metal, but let's turn it down a little bit so I can show you I can do it. Then we'll bring it up. He looked at me, he said, all right, so I cranked it down, so I'm welding overhead pass. He said, okay, it looks pretty good. Now turn it up. It looked like 4th of July, splatter going all over the place, but I welded. I said, did I pass? Oh, I can't tell you that. You got to go back up and see Ernie. So, all right, so I diddle back up. Come in, Ernie says, well, he said, you passed your welding test. He says, I guess I'll give you a job. He says, come back Monday. I'll start you on day shift. I said, oh, I can't do that. He said, why? I said, I'm still in high school. I got to work nights. Well, how old are you? I said, well, I'm 17. God dang it, Mike. He's raising hell. He said, I can't hire you at 17. He said, but when you turn 18, you come back and I'll hire you. I said, okay. Monday afternoon, my guy's school at 3:20. It's about 10 after 4. I come walking in Ernie's office. He turned around and looked at me. He goes, when was your birthday? I said, yesterday. He said, well, hell, I guess I'm going to have to hire you. He said, well, can't do it tonight. I got to do everything. He says, you got school tomorrow? Yeah, you get out of school, come straight here. We'll take care of everything. You're going to start night shift on Wednesday night. So he took one of the guys off the dry dock that worked nights, moved him to the dry dock at Burlington for days. And then that's where I started, you know, welding, you know, at McGinnis at nights. So first crack out of the barrel, I come in Wednesday, got all my stuff done, everything. Come in Tuesday, come in Wednesday. And then he said, you'll work day shift Saturday and Sunday, night shift Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays. All right. About 9 o'clock Saturday morning, it's in January, it's snowy, cold, pissing rain, snow. Under a barge welding, step out. And like I said, old Mr. Bernard Williams goes, Harry boy, get you some of this. Well, I don't know about that. I ain't never chewed. That won't hurt you. All right, so I got some stuck in my mouth. I chew it a little bit. I said, okay, too bad. And it was spit. No, you don't want to spit. You'll be welding over there. He says, just swallow it. You'll be all right. About 20 minutes later, I'm holding 2 timber heads on the end of the dry dock. Got both knees jammed up against them, puking in the river. Elwood, which was Elwood Jones, he was the foreman. And he would always holler, yar, mother. That's how he'd always call everybody. He said, what are you doing? Puking, what's it look like? You got a hangover? No. Burner gave me that red man, told me to swallow the juice out of it. He goes, you dumb son of a bitch. Now I've already laid in the water and the snow. I'm soaking wet, puke all down the front of me, 18 years old. I'm like, God dang, I'm gonna kill somebody. He says, go home and get cleaned up. He said, come back tomorrow. We'll try this again. So I come back Sunday. Bernard opened that mail pouch, opened it. I said, get that away from me. And then that next day I actually started, hang on a second. You need something, baby?
Just making sure you're good.
Okay. So then actually Sunday, I got a full day in, and then we come out Monday after school, 4:20 till 2:30 in the morning was my shift. So I'd leave school, go home, eat, drive back, weld all night, get done in the morning, go home, go to sleep, get up. And where I had vocational school in the mornings, I didn't have to be there. I had to be there at 10:30 for homeroom and then lunch and then start my classes. So a real good friend of mine, Kelly Cantor, he would leave school and come get me so I could make it to school. So during this repetitious revolvement every day went around, we would do this. They put me on 12-hour shifts. So at this point, I was going in at 7 in the evening, getting off at 7 in the morning because we had either the old Etna Louisville or Allied Ashland. big old heavy boats, Ashnor's big line boats at the time. And they were needing the wheels, whole ass end refurbished, so I'd have to weld on that, so they put us on 12-hour shifts. Now, during all this time while I was in school, most of the time I sat at the desk in the back of the class because I was face down, sound asleep, snoring. They'd wake me up, I'd take my test, flop my head back over. Well, my very first class reunion I went to a couple of years ago was my 40th class reunion because I didn't go to any of them. Got talking to some of them in there, and they told me, thought I was just a stoner in the back of the class because my eyes was always red. I was always, you know, just laid back or, yeah, whatever, snoring, didn't do anything. They didn't even know how in the hell I passed. I'd raise my head up long enough to take a test and then be done with it. They didn't know I was working in the shipyard at night. It wasn't until that moment I said, yeah, and it wasn't for Kelly over. He came and got me all the time. Well, one of them said, well, remember they said you was doing something as a welder, but wasn't really for sure what it was. I said, yeah, I was working all night and still going to school during the day. So that stoner and idiot that you thought I wasn't really. I was making more money than you all were. Because at the time, that was in 79, I was making $7.87 an hour on day shift to $7.97 an hour on night shift. That was when minimum wage was $2 an hour. It went from $1.90 to $2.10 an hour or something like that. So one of the teachers said that, you know, I may not pass, but I was going to be the richest one that was a student, not their parents, but student working in there. So was out there one day and Ernie needed the crane moved. He says, Mike, he says, you run that Vivian? I can give it a shot. Well, get in there and get a hold of the crane, put it on that side of the dry dock. Well, I got up there. Took me a little while, but I got crane faced up, got it around there on the outside of the dry dock and come back. And then went back to welding. And that was about the only time that I moved it while I was a welder. That was January, all the way through the end of school. Right there at the end of May, my dad had a heart attack. Well, prior to this, he bought 80 acres around the lake up in Canada. And during the summertime, he would go up there and run the campground. In the wintertime, he would come back and had the marine or went back into pipe fitting. So I was still hell all over the place as a kid. And he'd had that heart attack. I had to go help him. So I told Ernie, I said, hey, look, I'm going to quit. I'm going to go help Daddy because, you know, he got nobody to open the park up the campground. He had 50 sites on the lake up there. We built a log bathhouse. Used to take people bear hunting and everything and fishing. And, while we were there, you know, I told Dad I stayed during the summer. I said, I won't head on back, you know, see if I can get a job. And he said, okay, because Mom had come up. So I was there until, I think, August. I came back, asked Ernie if he'd weld. He goes, no, need a decking on that Vivian for Cliff. Well, it's Cliff Roberts. And Cliff had told me when he got his first job on the river, he was 7 years old. And he was putting lighted lanterns on the corner of the barges. And then when he was 12, he got a job wheeling coal from the coal flat up the ramp onto the side of stern wheeler, and then would dump it, and then the fireman would shovel that into the boiler box and keep it running. So Cliff started out as a kid also. Well, he'd had throat cancer, and he had to holler in order to talk. So a lot of people couldn't deck for him because they thought he was screaming at him, and most of the time he was, but he had to for you to understand him. So I started decking for Clifford. And Cliff taught me to run a boat without ever letting me touch sticks. I'd go untie it. I'd say, don't move till I get back upstairs. So I'd run all the way back up in the wheelhouse. And then he would do whatever it is we had to do. And he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to learn how to run a boat. I'm going to watch you and see how to do it. And he'd just look at me. Cliffy was about 6'2", about 260 pounds, big, strong man. And wheelhouse on Vivian was little. I learned a lot of lessons from this man. One is if he puts his sandwich in front of your face while he's got his arms crossed like this, writing in the log, and just because you might be hungover and hungry doesn't mean take a bite of his sandwich. Because I did. Yep, he hung his hat on the whistle, set his glasses on the console. We had a little old school bus seat in that Vivian, grabbed me by the throat, put me down, and the only thing that Ernie and Cliff and John and all of them, Jocko and Howard Runyon, which was his son-in-law, could see was my feet in the air and then Cliff doing this. Well, what he was doing, he was feeding me that sandwich. They thought he was killing. Well, he about to get. I had bread mayonnaise up my nose, underneath my eyelids. They come back, they come running up there. Ah, God, little snot nose, you want to eat my sandwich? I'll feed you that fucking sandwich. So I'm snorting it all out of my mouth and everything. They're all laughing, goes back downstairs. Well, Howard went home and told Miss Mary, which was Cliff's wife. Here I am, living in my mom and dad's house. You know, McGinnis wasn't hardly paying anything for deckhands. I'm trying to make a living. Then he told him that I had to make mom and dad's house payment, which is I didn't. Had to pay all the utilities, which is I wasn't. But Howard told her all this. And that I'm so hungry, I can't have a sandwich or anything. You know, I have to eat Clifford's. And he got mad, you know. So Miss Mary made Cliff go make sandwiches to get me a bottle of pop and a little bag of potato chips to bring it to me every day for lunch. Well, Clifford told me, he says, here, a woman made this for you. And he tossed it to me. He said, don't eat it all at one time. I'll save it for lunch. So I would. Well, come to find out, Miss Mary told Cliffy he was going to do it, that she wasn't doing it, but she was going to make sure he did because he's the one making my life miserable. So Cliff, I found that out later, and I never did tell Cliff any different that I knew because hell, he was bringing me a sandwich. I wasn't going to mess it up. So Cliff, like I said, he'd had cancer off and on. He got sick. Well, while he was sick, you know, he's in the hospital, in and out and stuff. He was off work. Ernie come down there one day and he had Jim Lancaster, which was Bill Lancaster's brother. He was an electrician there at McGinnis. He had Jim come down to run the boat. Told me deck for Jim. Well, we went up in fleet, pulled the barge out. I come back. Jim says, here, take us. We'll go back up to the dry dock. I said, all right. We come back up the dry dock. You had to turn around and head back up river. And Jim said, go ahead and turn around. So I turned around, started, you know, to head out. He goes, no. Hang on just a minute. He walks out of the wheelhouse, down the side of the barge. He just motions for me to come on in. So I put the barge on the dry dock. John Greer, which was the foreman, I could hear him hollering at Jim, won't know what the hell he's doing. Jim's telling him to shut up and throw him the line. So he did. And the barge, you know, you run any line over, you got your stops. So the barge comes in, line comes tight, you ease it, and then they raise the dry dock, you unface, and away you go. Ran the face wires out, and Jim stepped on toe, and he put me at the house flat. I put him at the house flat. He goes, see you later, Cap. He said, I'm going to tell him to get you a deckhand. He goes, I ain't running the damn boat. I hate running the boat. So he told John. John put one of the laborers on there decking for me. Thought Ernie was going to shit when he found out I was running up and down the river on the boat. But I did that for better than a month. I ran the boat all day long. Clifford came back. First thing out of his mouth was, Harry, you ain't nothing one of them old scabs. You know, the guys that work when the striker, your miners are out on strike or whoever's on strike, you go in, stealing their jobs. He is raising hell with me. And he gets done. I said, Cliff, Ernie told me if I'd run the boat, he wouldn't have to hire a pilot. If he hired a pilot, he's afraid you wouldn't have your job when you come back. So you go back to run a boat, I'll go back to decking. Cliff goes, hey, little snot-nosed asshole, thank you. You know, he said, that's all I'm going to say. So went back to run the boat for him. And then he took more time showing me, you know, more stuff. Well, then Doug called me up to the office one day because I want to talk to you. Go, ready? He said, well, why don't you go down to Evansville, down the mouth of the Green River. We got fuel dock up inside the Green River, and then right across from the Green River, there at Old Evansville Coal, we got a dry dock. I want you to go down there, be dry dock for me. You'll run the crane, run the crews, you know, you'll be working with JR, which is Oakley Bentley Jr. Anyhow, we go down there. He said, you'll do that, and you go over to fuel dock and help them out some too. So I go down there, I'm at the dry dock, I'm at the fuel dock, I'm at the dry dock, back and forth, and I'm getting all kinds of time, all times overtime, everything. And Doug calls me up. He goes, whoa, we got to cut this overtime shit out. He said, you know, you get 100 hours a week. He said, I don't know when the hell you're sleeping, but they tell me you don't sleep. And really, I don't. I've done this all my life. You get to where you don't sleep much at all. So after about 2 years there, Bruce come in. He says, got to get your license before we all go to jail. There was an old man that worked for the Coast Guard out of Evansville. He would come down and he would do surprise visits and stuff, you know, and every time he come down, I wouldn't run the boat. It just happened to be at the field dock. Well, he come down one time, they boarded an AEP boat, was putting fuel on. He comes walking in there, he looks at me, he goes, "Hey, Mikey," he goes, "Where's your license?" I said, "Truck broke down, driving here." I said, "I had to bring my dad's truck, I left my briefcase." He looked at me, he said, "All right." Well, a couple of weeks later, he showed up. I said, "You see my truck out there in the parking lot?" He went, "Nope." Because I went home, I would work a week and I'd go home for 4 days, and then I would come back and work another week and go home. And this is the way my schedule was. So every week I was going home. So 2 or 3 times there, he showed up and I told him, you know, truck was gone, briefcase gone. Finally, July the 7th, I went to Memphis, went down, got my license. On the 3rd, I missed one too many on the rules of the road, had to wait. Next day was July 4th. Now, they wasn't going to be in. So July 5th, which was a Friday, they come in, took my test. That's when you could go down test, get your license, 3 days, come home. Got my license. I came home on Friday with them. Sunday afternoon, I'm sitting there at the at the field dock, look up, here he comes. The old man with 3 or 4 of his new Coast Guard guys come walking up. And I said, "Hey, let me show you something." I said, "Here," hand him my license. He looked at it. He goes, "Good, I'm glad you got him, because next time he's on the boat, we're gonna have problems." And he stopped. He said, "You lying son of a bitch." I said, "What?" "You just got your license." I said, "I know, but you told me all this time you had him." I said, "I never told you I had my license. I told you I left my briefcase in the truck." He sat there, he was son of a bitch. He said, "You did. You didn't lie to me. You just said you didn't. The exact words was, you told me you didn't have them and that you left your briefcase." I said, "Exactly. I don't have my license and I left my briefcase in the truck and it's at the house." And he said, "Well, you got me on that." And then as the time goes on, I would tell him, I said, "Why don't you just let me know when you're coming down? I'll set some stuff up here," because he could never find anything wrong with field rock. Bruce always told you, keep this place like it's supposed to be. So there was never, it was always good. Never no oil leaks underneath the generator. Even though it was in Detroit and they leaked, there was never no oil on the deck. The Beth barge was our supply barge that we kept, and then we pumped from that over into the 536, which was a fuel plant that we had for ash and oil. So the old man would come down, and he would let me know, and I'd always set stuff up because they never could find anything. And then his guys would always, got their starch in their drawers. And this one time I was fueling a boat, and you had all your checkoffs, and there was 2 of them, which was sea chest. Well, I'd mark all the way down to put NA. Then I had my name, and I put HMFIC. And you know what HMFIC means, right? Head motherfucker in charge, right? I had HMFIC. Well, I was a kid, but this guy was a younger kid than I was. And he started that chest poking and paper, and this is an official government form, and HMFIC, you're going to tell me exactly what it means and all that stuff. And, hell, his head was about yay big, and he was elevated, and here we went. Old man was standing back there, and I says, "My name's Mike Forbess, HMFIC. You know what that means? That is the Honorable Mike Forbess in charge." I said, "I'm also a Shriner. Means I'm Honorable Mike Forbess in charge. HMFIC. What'd you think it meant?" I sat there and looked at him. The old man was back there. His face turned red. He had his hands like this, trying to keep from laughing. He throws his hands up, went stomping off. I looked at him. I said, "I like it when you bring kids down." He said, "You're a kid too." "Yeah, but I'm a smart ass and I was born to it." And he started laughing. But I was there for a while. And then my dad ended up dying of cancer. Came back to South Point, started working for Bruce back in the harbor. Then went to work for Amherst for Bill Barr, BARR. And he's a pretty good fellow. I worked for him for about a year. He was going to get me out on boats, get me posted on line boats. No, he stuck me at the head of the Kanawha River up there at Cannleton Cole, an old boat called the Loosedale. I'd be up there for a week and then come home for a week and back and forth. And we were sitting there one day and John Church hollered at me. He said, "Hey, there's a boat out here to Walter Blessey needs a pilot. Their pilot just quit." He gave me the number, so I called Bill McNeil up at Blessey, and that's back when they had the Walter Blessey, the Walter Blessey, the Laney Blessey, and Blessey, and the Ruth Blessey. He had 4 boats. Each boat was its own entity. That way, if one had an accident, got seized or whatever, it didn't take everything else. Yeah, I don't know if you knew how big that Blessey is, but Blessey is a huge outfit. So I went to work for Bill McNeil on that Walter Blessey. I got on the boat at South Point, and well, I called him, and what he told me was, he says, "Well, Mike," he said, "I got a pilot." He said, "And everything." He said, "We're pretty good shape, but give me your name and number. If I need anything, I'll call you back." I said, "Okay, that'll work." So I gave you my number, all that stuff. Then about 30 minutes after we called, and he said he didn't need anybody, my phone rings and Mom says, "It's Bill McNeil." So I answered the phone there and I said, "What you got, Cap?" He goes, "Well, obviously you know more than I do." He said, "My pilot quit." He said, I need, pilot." And I said, "Okay." I said, "When do you want me to start?" He goes, "How soon can you get on?" I said, "Well, whenever." So I ended up catching the boat at Greenup Lock that night. And he asked me, he said, "Are you posted pretty well?" And I said, "About half." I said, "That's all I can say. I can run a boat, but that's about it." He said, "All right, well, we're going to put you on there with the captain and the relief captain because the pilot didn't come back." He said, "If everything works out all right, then we'll go from there." And I said, "All right." So I got on the boat southbound to Greenup. And he told me, when the water comes up, get swift, they'll cut the lines, back. They'll let the cutter back down from 15 on that little 1800 horsepower down to 9. I said, "Okay." I got on the boat at Greenup, went to KOT South Shore. We picked up barges. We had 15 loads. The boat wouldn't back it up, couldn't get slack in the line. I hollered down and told deck in. I said, "They're an axe and cut that line." Captain and relief captain were sitting up there with me. They cut it. I backed her out in the river. We started going down the river. I was chasing them. I finally got, back up under it. We got to the Portsmouth Bridge, and the captain, old Gene Freeman, looks at me. He goes, "How far down the river?" I looked at him and I went, "That red light just went under right there. That's it." He said, "You're kidding me." I said, "Nope." I said, "That's it." I said, "I've never been below the Portsmouth bridges." And he started laughing. So he's going down to Maysville, turning that Warren. So we head down there and he goes, "Well, how far northbound are you posted?" I said, "Huntington." He's like, "Oh shit, you're not really posted." I said, "Nope, but I'm all you got right now, so I don't know what to tell you." So we go down, we're getting ready to turn the Warren, pick the radio up. Guy was on there, list that voice from in. I said, "Charlie, is that you?" He said, "Yeah, who's this?" I said, "It's Forbess." He says, "Mikey, the fuck are you doing?" Now that was Charlie Lancaster. That was Jim Lancaster's brother that was an electrician at McGinnis. I told you, come out, had me start running the boat, went back in. Well, that was his brother, Charlie. There was Charlie, Bill, Eddie, Jim. I think there was 4 of them. So we're sitting there talking for a little bit. He says, "Bet you don't, or I ain't seen this old boat in a while, have you?" I said, "No, but I got pictures of me and Mamaw and Captain Dutch and Butch and I on it." It's when it used to be the Pamela D. Dutch went to Kirby, or to not Kirby, went to Brent Towing, took his boat and everything, sold it to Brent. They widened it, raised the wheelhouse on it, made it a bigger boat. And I got this captain, relief captain. They're like, you used to ride that boat?" I said, "No, I used to ride that boat when I was a little kid." I said, "My grandmother cooked on it when she cooked for Eno Dupree and all them. She trip cooked all over the place." And I said, "I used to ride that boat like a lot of them out here when I was little." So we come back up. We got back up to Greenup. The relief captain says, "I'm getting off. You got him." He says, "I'll see y'all later." So it was, like I said, it was high water. They were supposed to cut us back. They didn't. We ended up taking 15 loads. All that little 1800 was shoved all the way to Pittsburgh. I still remember we're coming back down. I'm making locks. I didn't have a clue in the world what in the hell I was doing, but it followed it. I didn't tear nothing up, didn't wreck. Come down around Long Bottom, I'm hollering down there. He comes up and he goes, "What are we doing?" "Oh shit." I said, "Yeah, I think I'm in here a little deep." But he came up and watched me. It finally started shoving out of it. And he'd always call me fucking harbor pilot. That's all Gene ever had. Same way with Andy. Gene and I didn't G and haul real well, because when I quit over there, I was in the process of whooping his ass for quitting, and I quit. And I had picked the radio up. I've been on the boat about a week and a half, or a week. I picked the radio up because Amherst had the repeater antennas to where that's how they talk to everybody. And I heard Bill on there. As I remember, it's WHB 969 Amherst, and they'd always go to channel 9. So I went over to 9, I hollered at him. He goes, "What are you doing, Mike?" "Yes, I'm on a Walter Blessey." "Oh, well, that's good. You getting you some trip work in?" "Yeah." No, not really. I took a full-time job." "Well, how are you going to be back over here?" "I'm not. You told me you'd get me posted up. You didn't." "They are. I am. Enjoyed working with you. This is my 2-week notice, 2 days before I'm due back. Hope you have a nice day." He said, "Well, I'll need you to come in and see me when you get off." "Nah, don't think that's going to happen." So I rode for them for a year and a half. We went down, we were running basically Canova to Pittsburgh. Sometimes we go down Cincinnati, mostly at upper end. Then we went all the way down into the hole, and we was running from Baton Rouge to New Orleans to Houston and back. So I was doing that triangle run, not the other triangle, which is, over to Mobile and back up around the west side. So we'd run that, and I was running over to Houston for about a year. And like I said, Andy and I got along great. Gene was from Slidell, Louisiana. So as soon as we got down in the hole, Gene was a little short fella. The closer we got to New Orleans, the he got, the bigger his head got. We got down there running the canals where all of his brothers and everybody was, and he couldn't get in the wheelhouse. Come up there one day, reached across me, told me I wasn't running the throttles right. I was going across Wax Lake Spillway, said, "You need to hook it up." Slapped the throttles down. I threw it hard down, broke the coupling, turned around, looked at him. I said, "You just came on watch, big boy." And I walked downstairs and left him up there putting it back together. Came back up. I said, "You got a problem, something I'm doing, you tell me. Do not ever reach across me again like that." So we went all the way over. We came back, 3:00 in the afternoon. He comes upstairs, starts pulling the dope shades and shut the wheelhouse windows. We had about a 3-ton unit on that boat. If you turned it on cold and woke up, you could see your breath coming out of you in the bedroom. That's how cold it got. Well, I had the door shut going downstairs, so it wasn't affecting the thermostats downstairs. I was enjoying the, nice afternoon, 80-degree weather. He come up, pulling the dope shades down, shutting the doors, all this stuff. We got over, come out of Port Allen, tied the boat off, tied the barges off in the fleet, went over to Tri-G Marine, hung a line on. Said, "See you later, buddy." I called Bill McNeil, got a hold of Miss Carroll, told her I quit, and told her why. Gene stuck his head out the wheelhouse. We had a few words, and then I quit, go back up, went back to work for Bruce in the harbor. So I'm working for Bruce. GNC, which used to be Bosworth, they were needing pilots. So then I ended up going back to work up there, running the Canal River, back and forth, come back, work for Bruce in the harbor, back to GNC, same way, trip for Walker. This went on from 84 till 87. And then Carl Cannon got a hold of me. Told me, he was looking for pilots. I said, "That works." He said, "Well, actually, I had gone to Canada, like I said, after Dad had died. Mom still ran the campground, so I went up and helped her open it up. I come back on a Saturday night, listened to the answer machine there. Carl said he's looking for a pilot. I picked the phone up Sunday morning, got a hold of Andy Canova. He says, "Come in here Monday morning, first thing." I said, "All right." So I come in Monday morning, did all my tests, did all that stuff, filled all the paperwork out, went and caught I think it was the Sunny Ivy. No, it wasn't either. It was Hell, I was running the Stone Strait. Before that, it was the James Buki. Before that, it was the R.E. Doyle. So 5600 AEP built boat, that Dravo boat that AEP had and sold it to ACBL. So I got on it at Mount Vernon, southbound. We went down, went through Uniontown Lock. They were putting 10 more on the side of us. I walk upstairs. I look out in front. And Carl had asked me on the phone, he goes, "Are you posted from Pittsburgh to Cairo and high water?" I said, "Yes, sir," which wasn't a lie. Went to Cairo one time and it happened to be high water. So I figured that was posted. I'm sitting up there. Ed goes walking downstairs. I said, "Hey, Cap." And I said, "How hard do you want me to run?" He said, "Well, run as hard as you want." He said, "I run hooked up all the time." I said, "That's why they call you full of head, Ed." He just looked at me. I said, "Well, that's what I heard." He goes, yeah, that's why they call me full of head. If you run however you want to. I said, "All right." He gets on down steps a little bit farther. I said, "Hey, Cap." It's the only time I ever seen 25 barges. They were tied up in the fleet. The only time I was on 5600, I walked across the head of it and got lost. I said, "But you can go ahead there however you want to." I said, "I just want you to know before you go to sleep." Well, he comes back upstairs in a minute in his boxer shorts and his wife beater shirt on, his boxer shorts, a pair of white socks. He says, "You serious about that?" "Oh, yeah. He says, "You've never been on the ass end of 25? "Nope." "But you go and go to sleep. I got this." All righty. Well, got him to Cairo. Come back up, did it again, went back down. Then we ended up having to turn to Bill Carneal. That's when all that water got low. And I still had never met Carl Cannon. Low water down there above, well, between Paducah, down below 52, down to Post Creek. Water had dropped out, bar building, boats running the ground, and they knocked them down to 6 barges. Well, I had been going down through there during the night, and that morning, Ed come up and he says, "Hey, I've been in trouble here lately." He says, "Do you care to stay up and help me get this down through there?" And I said, "You're kidding me, right?" He goes, "No." He says, "I'll go get you breakfast if you want me to and bring it up." This man come up with a plate full of food running off the top of it. I wasn't going nowhere. Over up there, we get down there right where the Post Creek was. It was a left-hand turn in the buoy line. And Carl had put Freon jugs out because he came in and got on the Ned sheets and he was helping, spot all this. So Carl's following me down the river. Like I said, never met the man, didn't know who he was. And I went down and I'm flanking on, but I turned towards the right descending, turned her sideways to go down. So when it drag on that bar, the ass would drag a little bit. It'd slide right around. Then I'd come back ahead on it, push off and go right on around. Carl's coming behind me, hollering at me on the radio, telling me what I need to do. And I turned and looked at Ed. I said, "Who's this crazy son of a bitch?" He goes, "Oh, that's your fearless leader. That's Carl." I said, "Hey, my fearless leader." I said, "You're my captain. Who that son of a bitch is?" I go on down. Carl's hollering at me on the radio, telling me what to do. And I picked the radio up, and there was all kinds of chatter on the radio. There's people all over the place. And I said, "Look, Cap," I said, "your arms aren't long enough to run your boat and mine too. So you keep your arms back there and your sticks and you run your boat and I run mine. Just leave me the fuck alone. We'll get along just fine." I look back, Ed's got tears running out of his eyes. I said, "What is wrong?" He is laughing so hard. He said, "I've seen a lot of people get fired." He said, "But I've never seen one get fired as funny as you just did." Whatever. So we go on around the corner, go on down, hang our barges off. I grab empties, come up. And we have to stop because they're stuck. He got the head stuck on the bar, topped around behind the buoys, crossways, trying to get work loose. And me being me, I picked the radio up, said, "My arms aren't long either. But God dang, Cap, I did better than you did. You need to come up there and run that before you get on down around the corner." Now, this old man is laying in the floor now. He's fell off the couch in the floor laughing at me. Once they finally come by us, here's this guy coming out of the wheelhouse doing jumping jacks and waving, got on dress pants and a t-shirt. And I said, "Who's this stupid son of a bitch?" He goes, "That's your boss." "Ain't my boss." "Yeah, that's Carl." "Carl who?" He said, "Carl Cannon." I went, "As in the port cabin?" He went, "As in the one I just told run his own?" I said, "God dang, now I know why I got fired." So nothing else was said. We get on through this stuff. Finally, we get it towed, go on back up the river, and another word said. I'm riding with Eddie Marsh's daddy, Big E, Well, he's on the Charles Lehman. And I was still tripping. They hadn't hired me full time. And Big E called Carl and told Carl, you better hire this boy for somebody else gets him, make him full time. He said he can run a boat. I didn't know Eddie had done that until later on. So Carl calls me in, tells me he wants me to come into the office. I said, all right. I go in, hair down on my shoulder, cowboy hat on, jeans got holes blowed in them, everything else. I come walking in, Carl looks at me, picks the paperwork up, looks at the paper, looks back. He said, how old are you? I said, 27. Well, by God, we ain't used to making pilots around here. He said, I was hired a pilot. I said, yeah, well, I never was a steersman either. I said, I learned everything on my own. At that point, I realized I might have said something I probably shouldn't have said to him also. I'll sit there for a second. He says, oh, kind of like keep your hands on your own boat because your arms are too short to run mine and yours too. I went, yes, sir. Yep. Now that you mentioned it. Yep. Sure enough. He says, we don't use cowboys around here. I said, well, sometimes you got to be one. I don't know what they'll tell you. He said, oh, well, all right. He said, I guess we're going to hire you. Well, that works. So with the little process, he says, I want you to go to the master's meeting. Where's that at? I said, Charlotte. When's that going to be? He said, next month. Gonna put me on a boat for 2 weeks, get me off, and gonna take me to the master's meeting. They should have known not to take somebody 27 years old, turn them loose with a bar tab, single, at any type of event, and there not to be pictures taken. At some point, they sent pictures home. I was on the stage with the microphone singing. I don't know. I had a hula hoop in my hand. They told me I had a very large time. The fact that I still had a job surprised me. But I ended up working for them for a couple of years. Fell in love, almost got married. That didn't happen. Quit line hauling, went back to work for McGinnis, working in the harbor. Was working for Bruce, and I'd line haul for Bruce, because he bought that old RJ Louder single screw, and he'd send it out. Water come up, whoever he had on it, they'd always get off of it. So he'd send Johnny Dasher and I back up to get it. Sometimes John Church, but mostly Johnny Dasher and I ended up going to get that thing, bring it back in. And then met this gal, and we were dating for a while. And one of her relatives, which was Corky Wells from up here in Ashland, he had a big electric contracting outfit. He used to have some trucks, he still had them. So I ended up taking the trucks, got him back up working, had a trucking company. And I quit the river altogether for 4 years. And then Carl Cannon called me one day. I was down in Florida, the truck phone rang. I answered it. He says, you know who this is? I said, yeah, I know who it is. What do you want? He goes, you trucking full time or you towboating? Well, I don't know. He said, well, I got a job if you want it. Well, just had my little boy there. He was, about 3 years old, and he was sick all the time, needed insurance. I said, yeah, I might as well come back and get insurance. So we ended up going in and see Carl. He started telling me all this stuff, and I said, so what are you going to do? Have me trip for a trip or two? He goes, yeah, just see if you like it. I said, you're going to see if I can conform to the new policies, aren't you? He goes, exactly. He said, shit's changed. I said, how bad? He said, it's bad. It's bad. And everybody knows Carl Cannon. He didn't have any friends while he was poor captain because he couldn't have any. Because he had a job to do, and he was just like the rest of us. Your job comes first, everything else comes second. So I go get on the Tennessee Merchant. I was on it for about a week, got off it, got on one little 4300s. And then he sent me over to the Illinois River. And I got on to Kansas City over there and started running it. And I've been on the boat about 3 weeks, and I'm just looking through stuff. And I called him up. I said, Jesus Christ, Carl, when did y'all lose control of the company? He said, what do you mean? I said, you got a Petters program here on the computer that you just go in and order whatever you want. There's nobody policing. There's nobody telling you what to do. I said, when did you lose control of the company? He said, well, it ain't that bad. I said, I'm looking right here at 10 quarter-inch Craftsman drive socket sets that were bought. I asked the mate, who got those? He goes, I did. Well, what'd you do with it? Oh, I gave them away to some of the lock guys and some of the fleet guys for Christmas presents. I looked at Carl, I said, oh, it's gonna be for his company goes bankrupt. He went, don't say that. I said, okie dokie. So I said this was the second time back. I come back, I got married, everything was going along pretty good. And he had me one boat, different boat, I was all over the place. And then we ended up, ex-wife and I got divorced, had a little boy and a little girl. We got divorced. Came back, worked in the harbor again a little bit, then was back working back for McGinnis, for ACBL all the time. And they went, let's see, got divorced, then I ended up meeting my present wife now, her and I was dating, and we got married. And they had a job opening thing for barge maintenance, for inspectors and stuff. So I went and applied for that, did the set in on it. They said, well, where you been in, worked at McGinnis, South Point, all that stuff. They said, we're going to go ahead and hire you, let you transfer inside the company. So I went from the wheelhouse into barge maintenance, moved into Naples, Illinois, up there, lived in an old house that was built in 1861. And the house that my wife and I was in before that was a brick house. It was down in South Shore, Kentucky. It was built in 1861 by a riverboat captain named Captain Jefferson Davis. He had old ferry landing across through there. Well, he had that house. Then the house was kind of like a little dinner restaurant place. And then it was a morgue. Well, if you don't believe in ghosts, all you got to do is live in that house and you will. We sold that house. We moved to the one that was in Illinois. It was built in 1861 by Captain Moetta, which was a riverboat captain. And we actually had tintype, the old pictures with Lincoln and Douglas Scott, where they were having a debate in our living room of that house. House was 3,000 square feet, 2-story, had the glass cupola all the way on top. It's like 11 or 12-foot ceilings. Things was huge. And if you didn't believe in ghosts and you was in the house that we was in South Shore, then you would have. If you still didn't and you came to this place, you was, by God, you did then at that point, because we had pictures. There was a lot of shit happening in that house. And what was funny is where we're living at now, I had called a guy to come over to see about moving the gun safe for me. His brother and him are the ones that moved us from South Shore, Kentucky to Naples, Illinois, then from Naples back to Corydon. And that's why I called him. And he came up, he goes, I remember your house. It was that great big haunted house in Naples that I told him I was getting the hell out of here before it got dark, because there's no way I'm staying in this house and unloading any more shit in the dark, because they were already spooked from it. But moved up there, barge maintenance, checking barges, checking docks. Every day I was out checking 30, 40 barges up and down. I worked from St. Louis all the way to Havana, Illinois. All the fleets, all the elevators, there was a problem, I was at it. Did this for almost 2 years. And then they wanted me to come into the office here in Jeffersonville. And that's how I ended up moving to Corydon. So we move on Christmas Eve. Paul Conrad, which says Conrad Trucking, they've come packed us up, brought us to Corydon, and on Christmas Eve, his family, mom, dad, everybody, brothers, sisters, the whole 9 yards is unloading the truck. They're packing us all, into the house, got us in there. We have Christmas, and then I go in the 31st of December, I'm in the office, and while I'm in the office, they have a company meeting, they come up and say that they were going bankrupt. The day I started in the office at ACBL, Carl was sitting in there, and I looked at him, I said, told you them 1/4-inch Craftsman drive sockets was going to get your ass, and he started laughing. But that's when I started doing the restructure and everything. And I stayed in the office for about 2 years, made it through 3 of them. And then they told me, they want me to go back either to move back to South Point and be over the chemical side. They tried to get me to Cairo, take over repairs and all that. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm done. See y'all later. I walked out the door and I had a job before I got outside with Inland Marine for Dave and Kathy Hammond, Dave Jr., and I worked for them, I think, for almost 15 years before I quit. I would run the Green River Forum, the upper, lower, any place they need. They would run me all over the place. Larry Gwynn, he passed away. He was over. There was a couple of us that were senior captains. And I called in there one day, and it was in January. Joe Shuck was a dispatcher. And I said, well, I'm going to catch a boat. He goes, well, if you want to work, you're going to need to go somewhere else. I said, okay. So I called Ronnie Griffith over for Charles Strait at Western. I said, hey, Ronnie, need any trip work? He goes, yeah, come on. I got just a boat for you. He put me on that Brook McKenzie, which Charles's carpenters they're craftsmen. They're not even carpenters. I mean, they do some great work. Inside that Brook was immaculate. Engines were wore out, hull was wore out, but the boat had nice living conditions. So I got on there in January, and I'd ride, off and on, just back and forth. I never did call inland back. Then in July, Dave Jr. called me. He goes, have you talked to any of my dispatchers? I said, yeah, back in January, they told me if I wanted to work, I need to go somewhere else. He said, when's the last time you was on a boat over here? I said, December. He said, you still work for me? I said, I guess so. You're still paying my insurance. He said, so from December till now, you've been at Western. I said, no, from January to now, I've been at Western Rivers. He said, I've been paying your insurance this whole time. I said, yeah, it worked out great for me. I'm getting trip wages. You're paying my insurance. And you can tell your dispatcher, thank you very much. He goes, when do you want to get back on the boat? I said, well, I'm going home here in a few days. I said, I come back. So Dave said, all right. He said, we'll have you on the boat, or we'll get you stuff in the shipyard, and blah, 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 whatever. I go home, told Ronnie I was going home. He said, okay. I come back. I got on the boat for about 8 days, got on a J and Phillips, was up above Lock 18. I told him I needed a release. I said, all my life, I said, my family, my wife, Mary Beth, she's come in second. Kids come in second, everything. So I told him I was going to go home. She had an insurance company she was opening up. I said, all right. So I get in a rental car. Dave Jr. calls me on the phone. He goes, everything okay? Yeah. Mary Beth, I'm doing this for her. He goes, well, no, you have done everything for us you need to. I said, all right. Well, with that being said, he goes, hey, I got a favor. There's a picture on Facebook. And I said, you're shitting me. We're going to Facebook right now. He said, yeah, the lawyers are a little worried about this picture. It's got your feet on the console. Well, you know the pictures you've seen my feet on the console, right? That's the very first picture I put on Facebook that showed my feet. Junior said the lawyers are afraid that, he said you're not paying attention. I said it's called ambiguity, loss of situation awareness. He goes, yeah, that's it. He said they're afraid that if something happens that somebody will see this and think you're not paying attention. I said, have you seen the picture? Well, no. So you're calling asking me to take a picture off Facebook you've not seen. Well, yeah. Okay, well, hang on just a minute. Let me pull the car off the side of the road. So I pulled it up. I screenshot it and sent it to him. I said, now there's the picture. Now I am deleting it. He goes, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I said, you notice on them throttles, there's only one in gear? He goes, oh, yeah. Now look at the head of the toe. You see it shoved into the bank? He sat there and he goes, yeah. I said, so I'm not moving, am I? He said, well, no. I said, I'm not going through Vicksburg Bridge backwards with a selfie taking a picture. Like, I'll not mention Tony's name because I know he's on will be listening to this. I love you, brother, but it is what it is. Tony was doing that. And then, oh, shoot. Man, I can't remember the other guy's name. They just got done putting these two pictures on Facebook, one after the other, going through Vicksburg like that. But I told Dave, I said, okay, tell you what I'm going to do. I've deleted it. He says, thank you, Capt Mike. I appreciate it. I said, all right. He goes, well, I'm going to get off here. I said, Dave, I said, hold on a minute. I got something else I want to tell you. He goes, what's that? I said, consider effective immediately. I no longer work for Inland Marine. I quit. He goes, why are you quitting? 45 minutes later, I was done telling him why I quit. So when I got back on the boat, I called Ronnie up. I said, hey, dude, I need a job. He goes, yeah, I already made you full time. I started laughing. I said, that's good because I'm going to need insurance. He goes, I'll get you signed up for it. So when I got back on the boat, very first picture I took, my feet was on the console and that middle toe was stuck straight up in the air, and I took that picture. Mark Roach called me. He was laughing so hard he was crying. He goes, I know what that meant right there. So then after that, you know, that's why all the pictures my feet up. And during COVID, Jason Strait called me. He was laughing so hard he was crying because I put blue rubber gloves on my feet. Said I got my PPE on for this COVID with my feet. He said I feel a lot of shit. He said, Mike, but that's the funny shit I've seen in a long time. But that's how I ended up getting, you know, where I'm at now, Charles. But back to, let's go over to my wife.